Comparing Saints Row to GTA is kind of like comparing a Porsche to a Ford Ka. Sure, they're similar in that they both ostensibly deliver the same core experience, but one always feels significantly more premium than the other. Saints Row the Third was the installment that saw the Sandbox series lean into its wacky eccentricities more than ever, looking to escape Rockstar's shadow by focusing on anarchic action, irreverent humour, and an over-the-top story. I'm pleased to report that all remain intact for this newly remastered version on PS4 and Xbox One, and while it might largely still play like a 10-year-old game, Saints Row the Third Remastered's overhauled visuals and improved lighting makes this return trip to Steelport worth it. I'm Aaron from Console Deals, now let's get into why. To get the necessaries out of the way early, yes, Saints Row the Third Remastered is very much the same game people who played it the first time around will remember. Taking place 5 years after the events of Saints Row 2, we pick up with the titular gang during the height of their global fame, but it isn't too long before a botched job sees them need to vacate Stillwater in favour of the sprawling city of Steelport to set up a new base of operations. I say sprawling because the streets and areas featured here are a lot more densely populated this time around, especially when compared to the simulated version of Steelport we got in Saints Row 4. Whereas in that game, navigating the world using superpowers meant that you hardly spent time in a car or at ground level, in Saints Row the Third Remastered you're able to notice these minute details more. The folks over at Deep Silver obviously knew this, spending a lot of time reworking assets like building interiors, character models, and general gun aesthetics. The result is a game that definitely looks better than it did before, even if it's not quite on par with any of 2020's ground up remakes. This doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things though. It feels just as good to blow up tanks to cause as much financial damage as possible, or parachute out of a plane as it ever did, only now explosions look a lot more radiant, and some nice HDR integration ensures that getting around the city always feels immersive, either at night or during the day. Saints Row, unlike GTA, was never about looking like the most realistic game out there, and even with all these improved visual tweaks, the series' trademark cartoon-esque style successfully remains intact. One technical drawback I did notice in my playthrough was some significant pop-in. Put pedal to the metal in any of Saints Row the Third Remastered's vehicles to reach full speed, and you're sure to notice parked cars suddenly appearing from thin air. Such a visual hiccup is something you'd expect to see during the time of the game's original release, so it is a little disappointing that it couldn't be sold for this recent remaster. Small glitches like this don't outright break the experience. If anything, it's perfectly in keeping with the franchise's scrappy overall attitude, but kind of does negate the need for this remaster at all. If you're a complete newcomer to the series as a whole, or just Saints Row the Third, it's perhaps best described as what if an open world game but amped up to 11. A lot of your time is spent establishing the Saints in this new Petropolis you find yourself in, taking down rival gangs to assert your reputation, and causing rampant amounts of destruction as the situation demands it. All objectives are assigned to your in-game phone, which you'll return to time and time again to upgrade your custom character, undertake new missions, and transfer any funds received from expanding your criminal empire. There's a strong argument to say that the Saints Row series never got better than this third entry. After all, the first two games seemed like they were riffing on the GTA formula a little too much and were left wanting for some identity. Then Saints Row 4 came along and it went almost too crazy by making you president, packing in alien invasions, and gifting you with a suite of superpowers that made exploring the open world somewhat redundant. Saints Row the Third, however, comfortably sits somewhere between these two extremes, serving as a carefree sandbox game that stays grounded enough to make your actions be meaningful, while still oozing with plenty of outlandishness. Oh, and get used to seeing lots and lots of purple. This being a re-release means that Saints Row the Third Remastered features all the bells and whistles you'd expect. That means the incredibly fun base game is included here, of course, alongside all 3 previously released mission packs and any bonus items originally exclusive to the full package edition eventually released after. That meant I could spend the majority of my playthrough role-playing as a badass Russian lady garbed in a nun's outfit, which definitely made storming the strongholds of rival gangs an interesting experience. What's more, Saints Row the Third once again features full online co-op, which is to be expected considering that this was also the case for the current gen release of Saints Row 4, Re-Elected, but it's still worth shouting out as 2-player support is such a rarity in open world games of this type these days. Odds are that any side mission or story set piece you thought was bombastic before only gets even more insane when you're joined by another player. Overall, Saints Row the Third Remastered largely manages to retain what made one of the series' best entries such a blast, while still finding enough wiggle room to make some appreciated visual improvements. It may have taken its time getting here, but this PS4 and Xbox One version serves as a nice reminder to when sandbox games had a lot more fun and attitude, and it's never looked better. We give Saints Row the Third Remastered a 3 out of 5.
There's like half a dozen guys. I can take them.
What about the plane?
I'll fly it back to Stillwater.
Johnny, you can't even drive stick. How you gonna fly a plane?
Details. Just cover the boss. Go. I got this.